The human joked about being the lost prince. The birthmark scanner wasn't joking when it confirmed. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. The stale recycled air of Celestial Station Alpha 7 tasted of industrial cleaners and too many bodies packed into too little space. Ethan Cole wiped sweat from his brow as he pushed his cleaning cart down the crowded corridor, dodging diplomats and merchants from a dozen different worlds. Just another day in the life of a human janitor, the lowest rung on the interstellar social ladder. Ethan had been working on Alpha 7 for 3 years now. The pay was decent enough to send some credits back to his family on Earth, but the constant reminder of humanity's place in the galactic hierarchy wore on him daily. Humans were newcomers to the interstellar community, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 47 years ago. The older spacefaring species, particularly the Arcturians and Viridians, treated humans as primitive curiosities at best, servants at worst. The station's central atrium bustled with activity as Ethan maneuvered his cart toward a spill near the Grand Fountain. Alpha 7 served as a diplomatic hub and trading post between the 17 recognized spacefaring species of the Galactic Concord. Massive viewports revealed the swirling blue-green gas giant the station orbited, its rings glittering like diamond dust against the void. Human, clean this immediately. A tall Arcturian diplomat gestured imperiously at a puddle of bluish liquid at his feet. His iridescent scales shimmered under the atrium lights, and his 3 eyes narrowed with impatience. "Right away, sir," Ethan replied, keeping his voice neutral despite the familiar burn of resentment. He reached for his mop as the Arcturian swept away without another word, his elaborate ceremonial robes trailing behind him. As Ethan cleaned, he observed the crowd. Merchants haggled at kiosks, security drones hovered watchfully overhead, and various species mingled in the diplomatic zone. Near the fountain stood a contingent of Viridians, tall, willowy beings with pale bluish skin and elongated features. They appeared agitated, speaking in hushed tones and constantly scanning the area. "They've been like that all day," said a voice behind Ethan. He turned to find Maya Foster, another human janitor and one of his few friends on the station. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she leaned on her own cleaning cart. "The Viridians?" Ethan asked, finishing with the spill. Maya nodded. "Something big is happening. Security's been doubled, and I overheard that the Viridian royal delegation is arriving tomorrow." Ethan raised his eyebrows. "Royalty? Here, apparently, Crown Prince Zorith is making a diplomatic tour. First time a member of their royal family has left Viridia Prime in over 50 years. "Great," Ethan sighed. "That means extra work for us. Royal visits always mean royal messes." Maya grinned. "At least we get overtime pay. And who knows, maybe you'll get to meet alien royalty. Right? I'm sure Prince What's his name is dying to meet the human who scrubs the toilets." Maya's reply was cut short by their supervisor's barking voice over the comm. "Cole and Foster, stop chatting and get to conference room 3. Some Arcturian diplomats spilled their ceremonial drink everywhere." "Copy that," Ethan responded. He shared an exasperated look with Maya before they both pushed their carts toward the nearest lift. "You know," Maya said as they waited for the lift, "I heard the Viridians have some kind of weird birthright identification system. Apparently, all their royals have some genetic marker or birthmark that proves their lineage." Ethan shrugged. "Rich people stuff. They probably just made it up to seem special." The lift arrived, and they stepped inside. As the doors closed, Ethan absent-mindedly scratched at his shoulder where his own unusual birthmark, a starburst pattern he'd had since birth, occasionally itched under his uniform. "Level 3, Maya commanded, and the lift hummed into motion. Conference room 3 was indeed a disaster. Whatever the Arcturians had been drinking had splashed across the polished floor and even onto the walls. The room smelled of something between overripe fruit and ammonia. "This is going to take forever," Ethan groaned as they set to work. By the end of his shift, Ethan's back ached and his hands were raw from cleaning chemicals. He trudged toward the small quarters he shared with 2 other human workers, longing for a shower and his bunk. The station's night cycle had begun, dimming the corridor lights to a soft amber glow. As he rounded a corner, He nearly collided with a group of Viridian security personnel escorting what appeared to be technicians. They carried equipment Ethan didn't recognize, sleek devices with pulsing lights and holographic interfaces. "Watch your step, human," one of the guards snapped, shoving Ethan aside. Ethan stumbled back against the wall, biting his tongue to keep from responding. The last thing he needed was trouble with Viridian security. "My apologies," he said instead, lowering his gaze as he'd learned to do when dealing with higher-status species. One of the technicians, a female Viridian with intricate patterns tattooed along her slender arms, gave Ethan a curious look. Unlike the others, her expression held no contempt, only scientific interest. She carried what looked like a scanning device, its surface covered with ancient Viridian symbols. "What is that?" Ethan asked before he could stop himself. The security personnel bristled, but the technician held up a hand to calm them. "This is a genetic lineage scanner," she explained, her voice melodic with the characteristic Viridian accent. "It identifies the royal biomarker unique to the Viridian royal house." "For the prince's visit," Ethan guessed. The technician nodded. "We must verify all Viridians on the station. There have been concerns about imposters." "Enough," Naria, one of the guards interrupted. "Do not speak to the human of state matters." The technician, Naria, gave Ethan a subtle, apologetic look before the group continued down the corridor. When Ethan finally reached his quarters, his roommates were already asleep. He showered quickly and collapsed onto his bunk, but sleep eluded him. The encounter with the Viridians played in his mind, along with Maya's words about royal birthmarks. On impulse, Ethan rolled his shoulder to examine his own birthmark in the dim light. The starburst pattern seemed to shimmer slightly, its outline more defined than he remembered. Probably just irritated from the cleaning chemicals, he thought as he finally drifted off to sleep. The next day brought chaos to Alpha 7. The impending royal visit had everyone on edge, with security checkpoints established throughout the station and areas being cordoned off for the Viridian delegation. Ethan found himself assigned to the diplomatic reception hall, scrubbing every surface until it gleamed. "I heard the prince has some kind of political reform agenda," Maya said as they worked side by side. "The conservatives in the Viridian hierarchy aren't happy about it." "Politics," Ethan scoffed. "Same everywhere, I guess. Even alien royalty has to deal with bureaucracy." Cole, their supervisor, a heavy-set man named Harrington, appeared at the entrance. "You're needed in the royal suite. They want a final inspection before the prince arrives." Ethan suppressed a groan. "On my way." The royal suite occupied an entire section of Alpha 7's upper level, with panoramic views of space and luxury appointments that made Ethan's quarters look like a storage closet by comparison. A team of Viridian attendants scurried about, arranging exotic flowers and adjusting lighting to the precise specifications required by royal protocol. As Ethan checked the cleaning supplies in the suite's various bathrooms, he overheard two Viridian officials speaking in hushed tones. "The succession crisis worsens by the day," one said, his elongated fingers nervously adjusting his ceremonial collar. "If Prince Zorith cannot stabilize the situation, the conservative faction may attempt a coup. That is why this diplomatic tour is so crucial," replied the other. "He must secure alliances before returning to face the High Council." They noticed Ethan and immediately fell silent, their violet eyes narrowing with suspicion. "Your work here is complete, human," the first one said dismissively. "Leave us." Ethan nodded respectfully and gathered his supplies. As he turned to go, he noticed a small device on a nearby table, similar to the scanner Naria had carried the previous night. Political intrigue and succession crises, Ethan thought as he left the suite. Just like those historical dramas his mother loved to watch. Ethan had always found stories of kings and princes tiresome. Give him a good space adventure any day. By late afternoon, excitement rippled through Alpha 7 as the Viridian royal ship docked. Ethan watched from a service corridor as the processional moved through the main concourse, an elaborate display of guards, officials, and attendants surrounding a figure Ethan presumed to be Prince Zorith. From his vantage point, Ethan could only catch glimpses of the prince, tall even for a Viridian, with the characteristic pale blue skin and an elaborate headdress that partially obscured his features. Unlike the severe expressions of his entourage, the prince seemed to be smiling, occasionally pausing to acknowledge station personnel of various species. "Not what I expected," Ethan murmured to himself. "What did you expect?" asked a voice, making Ethan jump. He turned to find Neria, the technician from the previous night, standing in the service corridor. Without her security escort, she seemed more relaxed, her silvery eyes regarding Ethan with open curiosity. "I don't know," Ethan admitted. "Someone more arrogant, I guess. Most high-ranking aliens I meet can barely stand to look at humans." Neria smiled slightly. "Prince Zorith is known for his progressive views. He believes in equality between species, quite controversial among traditional Viridians. Is that why there's talk of a succession crisis?" Neria's eyes widened. "You've been listening to conversations not meant for you, human." "Ethan," he corrected her. "My name is Ethan Cole, and it's hard not to overhear things when you're treated like furniture." To his surprise, Neria looked genuinely chagrined. "I apologize. Ethan, you are correct, of course." She glanced at the royal procession, now disappearing into the diplomatic wing. "And yes, Prince Zorith's policies have created enemies. There are those who believe he is not fit to rule." "Politics," Ethan said with a slight smile. "Some things are universal." Neria regarded him thoughtfully. "You're not what I expected either." Before Ethan could respond, his comm unit buzzed. Harrington's voice came through, irritated as always. "Cole, get to the grand ballroom now. They need additional staff for tonight's reception." "Duty calls," Ethan said to Neria. "It was nice talking to someone who doesn't look through me for a change." As he turned to leave, Neria called after him. "Perhaps we will speak again, Ethan Cole." The grand ballroom had been transformed for the reception. Floating lights drifted near the high ceiling, shifting colors and patterns that mimicked Viridian's celestial phenomena. Exotic plants from Viridia Prime scented the air with a sweet, spicy fragrance. Dignitaries from all 17 species of the Galactic Concord mingled, their varied appearances creating a living tapestry of interstellar diversity. Ethan and several other human staff circulated with trays of refreshments, practically invisible to the guests. He noted the political dynamics at play, the Arcturians keeping a polite but noticeable distance from the Viridians, the mercantile Tellurians eagerly engaging with anyone who might offer trade opportunities, the reserved Cepheids observing from the periphery. Prince Zorith stood at the center of it all, conversing easily with representatives from various worlds. Up close, Ethan could see that the prince was younger than he'd expected, perhaps the Viridian equivalent of his early 30s. His facial structure bore the elongated elegance typical of his species, but his expressions seemed more animated, less reserved than most Viridians Ethan had encountered. Most striking was a faint pattern visible on the prince's forehead when he turned under certain lights, a starburst birthmark similar to Ethan's own, though more elaborate and luminescent. As the evening progressed, Ethan found himself assigned to the refreshment station near where the prince was holding court. He couldn't help overhearing snippets of conversation as he restocked trays. "Your Highness, your proposal for interspecies scientific exchange is commendable," said an Arcturian diplomat. "But the hierarchy's traditional position. The traditional position has kept us isolated for too long," Prince Zorith interrupted, his melodic voice carrying a note of passion. "The future of Viridia lies in cooperation, not isolation. Look around you, 17 species, each with unique perspectives and abilities. Together, we could solve problems that have plagued our individual worlds for millennia." "A beautiful sentiment," responded a Cepheid observer, her translucent skin rippling with patterns that indicated skepticism, "but one that your opposition on the High Council considers dangerous naivety." The prince smiled. "Change is always considered dangerous by those who benefit from the status quo." A ripple of murmurs spread through the gathered dignitaries. Ethan, refilling a tray of crystalline glasses with Viridian nectar, found himself admiring the prince's candor. "The succession crisis grows more concerning," ventured a Tellurian merchant. "There are rumors that traditional factions are gathering support for your cousin, Lord Maurin." The prince's expression hardened slightly. "My cousin is welcome to challenge my policies in the council chambers. That is the proper forum for political discourse, not whispered conspiracies." Suddenly, A commotion erupted at the ballroom's entrance. A group of Viridian security personnel rushed in, surrounding a severe-looking Viridian male with ceremonial military insignia. "Commander Tarvis," Prince Zorith acknowledged, his tone cooling. "I don't recall inviting the royal guard to this reception." The commander bowed stiffly. "Your Highness, I come with urgent news from Viridia Prime. There has been an attempt to access the royal archives, specifically the sealed records of the Lost Prince incident." A hush fell over the ballroom. Even Ethan, focused on his task, sensed the sudden tension. "We will discuss this privately," the prince said firmly. He turned to the assembled dignitaries with a practiced smile. "Please, enjoy the remainder of the reception. Diplomatic matters call me away briefly." As the prince and commander moved toward a side chamber, Ethan accidentally bumped into a Viridian official, spilling nectar on the floor. "Clumsy human," the official hissed, recoiling as though Ethan's proximity was offensive. "I apologize, sir," Ethan said quickly, kneeling to clean the spill. "It was entirely my fault." "Indeed it was," the Viridian sniffed. "Your kind lacks the basic grace that even the youngest Viridian child possesses." Something in Ethan snapped, a small rebellion against years of similar treatment. Before he could stop himself, he looked up with a mischievous grin and said, "You know where I come from. They say I have the grace of royalty. In fact, I might be a lost prince myself. See." He pulled his collar slightly to reveal the edge of his starburst birthmark. Royal birthmark and everything. The Viridian's eyes widened with outrage. "You dare mock our sacred traditions? The royal marker is not a subject for your primitive humor." "It was just a joke," Ethan said, his smile fading as he realized he might have crossed a line. But the damage was done. Nearby Viridians had overheard the exchange, and whispers spread rapidly through the ballroom. Ethan quickly finished cleaning the spill and retreated to the refreshment station, hoping the incident would blow over. It didn't. Minutes later, Harrington stormed over, his face flushed with anger. "What did you do, Cole?" "The Viridian diplomatic attaché just demanded you be removed from service." "I made a stupid joke," Ethan admitted. "I didn't think it would be such a big deal." "Everything is a big deal during a royal visit." Harrington grabbed Ethan's arm. "You're done for tonight. Report to my office tomorrow morning for disciplinary action." As Harrington marched him toward the service exit, Ethan noticed Neria watching from across the room, her expression troubled. Beside her stood another Viridian technician, holding one of the genetic scanners Ethan had seen earlier. The technician raised the device, pointing it in Ethan's direction. A soft chime emanated from the scanner, followed by a series of pulsing lights that shifted from blue to a brilliant gold. Neria's face transformed from concern to shock. She grabbed the scanner, examined its readout, then looked up at Ethan with disbelief. She said something urgent to her colleague, who appeared equally stunned. Before Ethan could make sense of their reaction, Harrington pushed him through the service door and into the corridor. "Go to your quarters," his supervisor ordered, "and pray I don't decide to terminate your contract entirely." Ethan spent a restless night alternating between anger at himself for the foolish joke and worry about his job. By morning, he had resigned himself to a formal reprimand and perhaps a suspension without pay. He was therefore surprised when, instead of reporting to Harrington's office, he was met at his quarters by two human security officers. "Ethan Cole?" one asked formally. "Yes," Ethan replied, his concern deepening. "Please come with us. Your presence has been requested." "By whom?" Ethan asked, bewildered. The officers exchanged looks. "We're not at liberty to say. Please come quietly." With no real choice, Ethan followed them through the station, noting they were taking him not to the administrative section, but toward the diplomatic wing. His confusion grew when they arrived at a security checkpoint outside the royal suite. Viridian guards scrutinized him intensely before one spoke into a communicator. After a moment, the doors opened, revealing an antechamber where Neria waited, along with several other Viridian officials who regarded Ethan with expressions ranging from curiosity to open hostility. "What's going on?" Ethan asked Neria, who seemed the only friendly face in the room. "You should not have joked about the royal marker," she said quietly. "It is considered sacred to my people." "I get that now," Ethan said. "But why am I here instead of getting fired by my supervisor?" Before Neria could answer, an inner door opened, and Commander Tarvis appeared. His three-fingered hand rested on a ceremonial weapon at his belt, and his violet eyes fixed on Ethan with undisguised suspicion. "The human will come with me," he ordered. "Alone?" "Commander," Neria interjected. "The protocol requires that I accompany him as scientific witness." Tarvis scowled but nodded curtly. "Very well, but only you." Ethan and Neria followed the commander through a series of chambers, each more elaborate than the last. Ethan had cleaned these rooms the day before, but now he was entering as a guest, or perhaps a prisoner. He couldn't quite tell. Finally, they reached what appeared to be a private study. Prince Zorith stood by a viewport, gazing at the gas giant beyond. Without his ceremonial attire, he looked younger and somehow more approachable, though no less regal. "Your Highness," Commander Tarvis announced stiffly, "the human is here, as requested." The prince turned, his silvery eyes studying Ethan with intense interest. The starburst birthmark on his forehead seemed to pulse faintly in the room's soft lighting. "Leave us, Commander," Prince Zorith said. "Your Highness, I must protest," Tarvis began. "Security protocols do not apply in this situation," the prince interrupted firmly. "Wait outside." With obvious reluctance, Tarvis bowed and withdrew. When the door closed behind him, an awkward silence filled the room. Your Highness," Ethan finally ventured, "I want to apologize for my inappropriate joke last night. I meant no disrespect to your traditions." The prince approached slowly, his gaze never leaving Ethan's face. "Show me," he said simply. Ethan blinked in confusion. "Show you? Your birthmark," clarified Neria. "The one you joked was a royal marker." Understanding dawned, and Ethan reluctantly pulled down the collar of his uniform to reveal the starburst pattern on his shoulder. Prince Zorith's breath caught audibly. He moved closer, studying the mark with evident fascination. "How long have you had this?" "Since birth," Ethan replied. "It's just a birthmark." "Neria," the prince said without taking his eyes from Ethan's mark. "The scanner." Neria produced one of the genetic scanner devices Ethan had seen previously. She activated it, and a soft blue light played over Ethan's birthmark. Almost immediately, the scanner chimed and its lights shifted to gold, just as they had in the ballroom. "It is confirmed, Your Highness," Neria said, her voice trembling slightly. "The genetic pattern matches the royal marker with 99.97% certainty." The prince stepped back, his expression unreadable. "Do you know what this means, Ethan Cole?" Ethan shook his head, a sense of unreality washing over him. "No, but I'm getting the feeling it's significant." "It means," Prince Zorith said carefully, "that you carry the genetic marker of the Viridian royal family, a marker that should be impossible for any human to possess." Ethan laughed nervously. "There must be some mistake. I'm human, born on Earth to human parents." "Are you certain of that?" Neria asked gently. "The scanner does not lie. Your genetic structure contains Viridian royal DNA." "That's impossible," Ethan insisted. "My parents are Jacob and Elena Cole. I grew up in Denver. I have childhood photos, school records." "I believe you," the prince interrupted. "But this raises questions that have troubled my family for 29 years. Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" Prince Zorith moved to a console and activated a holographic display. An image appeared, a news report in Viridian script. 29 years ago, the prince explained, "My younger brother, Prince Ilarion, disappeared while on a scientific expedition to a remote system near what was then the border of human space. His ship was destroyed in what appeared to be an asteroid collision. No body was ever recovered." The holographic display shifted to show a young Viridian male who bore a striking resemblance to Prince Zorith. He appeared to be in a laboratory setting, working with scientific equipment. "Ilarion was brilliant," the prince continued, his voice softening with old grief. "A geneticist specializing in cross-species adaptations. His work was considered radical, even dangerous, by the conservative elements of our society." A chill ran down Ethan's spine. "I'm 28 years old," he said slowly. "Yes," nodded the prince. "And the royal marker you bear is identical to my brother's." "Not similar, identical." Ethan's mind reeled with implications. "Are you saying I'm related to Viridian royalty? That's crazy." "Perhaps," Prince Zorith acknowledged. "But consider the facts. You possess a genetic marker unique to my family line. You were born approximately 9 months after my brother's disappearance, and the marker appears as a physical birthmark in the exact pattern as the royal line. Correlation doesn't equal causation, Ethan objected, falling back on the scientific principle his human mother, had taught him. This has to be a coincidence. The royal marker is not just a physical pattern, Narration explained. It contains specific genetic sequences that regulate neurological development, certain metabolic processes, and... She hesitated. And what? Ethan prompted. Longevity, Prince Zorith finished. My family lives approximately 3 times longer than average Viridians. It is part of what has allowed our line to maintain stability and leadership. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, overwhelmed. This is insane. I'm human. I look human. I've lived as a human my entire life. My brother's research, the prince said carefully, focused on genetic adaptation across species. Theoretical work on how one species might integrate aspects of another. A terrible suspicion began forming in Ethan's mind. Are you suggesting your brother experimented on himself? That he somehow became human? Or created you? Narration suggested gently. A human child with Viridian royal genetics. Ethan shook his head vehemently. No, my parents could have adopted you, the prince suggested. Perhaps without knowing your true origin. I look like them, Ethan protested. Everyone says I have my father's eyes, my mother's smile. People often see what they expect to see, Narration said. And human phenotypic variation is considerable. Ethan felt like the floor was tilting beneath him. His entire identity, his understanding of himself, seemed suddenly built on quicksand. I need to talk to my parents, he said firmly. Prince Zorith nodded. Of course. We can establish a secure communication channel. No, Ethan insisted. In person. I need to see their faces when I ask about this. The prince considered this. That may be problematic given the current political situation. If word spreads about your existence, about the royal marker you bear, it could complicate the succession crisis. How? Ethan demanded. Even if by some impossible chance I do have some connection to your family, I'm still human. I have no claim to anything Viridian. That is not entirely accurate, Narration interjected. The Viridian constitution is quite specific. Any being bearing the royal marker is eligible for succession, regardless of other factors. It was written this way because, historically, the marker itself was considered proof of divine right to rule. Divine right. Ethan laughed incredulously. You're an advanced spacefaring civilization that believes in divine right. Cultural traditions often persist even as technology advances, Prince Zorith said, a hint of amusement in his voice despite the serious situation. And while many modern Viridians view the tradition metaphorically rather than literally, the legal framework remains. So what now? Ethan asked. You found a human with a weird birthmark that matches your royal pattern. What happens to me? The prince's Narration paused in her efficient packing. I understand this is overwhelming. But the royal marker is not just a physical trait. It affects neural pathways, cognitive processes. Have you ever noticed yourself thinking differently from other humans? Processing information in unusual ways? Ethan hesitated. There had been moments throughout his life. Instances where he seemed to grasp complex concepts more quickly than his peers. Times when his perception of patterns and relationships seemed unusually acute. He had attributed these to simply being analytically minded. Maybe, he admitted. But that doesn't mean I'm part alien. Not part alien, Narration corrected. If our theory is correct, you are fully human in physical form, but with specific Viridian genetic sequences integrated into your DNA. Sequences that express themselves primarily in neurological development and, of course, the royal marker. A thought struck Ethan. If this marker is so important, why didn't any Viridian notice it before now? I've worked around Viridians for 3 years. The marker is normally concealed beneath royal attire, Narration explained, and it responds to specific scanning frequencies. Without the scanner, it appears as a simple birthmark to visual inspection, though unusually symmetrical. Their conversation was interrupted by a chime from Naria's communicator. We need to move, she said after checking the message. The prince's ship is prepared. As they hurried through the maintenance tunnels of Alpha 7, Ethan felt a growing sense of unreality. Part of him still expected to wake up from this bizarre dream, to return to his normal life of cleaning spills and being ignored by aliens. They emerged into a private docking bay where a sleek Viridian vessel waited. Its hull gleamed with a pearlescent sheen, and its design spoke of both elegance and formidable technology. Prince Zorith stood at the boarding ramp, conferring with Commander Tarvis and several advisors. "We received a transmission from the High Council," the prince was saying as Ethan and Neria approached. "Lord Maurin has formally challenged my fitness to rule, citing disturbing revelations about the royal bloodline." "He moves quickly," Tarvis observed grimly. "He must have had this plan before knowing about the human." "The human has a name," Ethan interjected as they joined the group. "And he's still waiting for someone to explain exactly what's going on." The prince turned to him with a hint of appreciation in his eyes. "You're right, Ethan Cole. You deserve a full explanation. But first, we must leave this station. My cousin's agents have more influence here than I anticipated." A sudden explosion rocked the docking bay. Warning klaxons blared as smoke billowed from a nearby access corridor. "Breach in Sector 7, shouted a security officer over the comm system. "Unknown assailants. Get the prince and the human aboard now," Commander Tarvis ordered, drawing his weapon. Ethan found himself hustled up the boarding ramp by Neria and another aide. Behind them, Viridian security personnel established defensive positions as figures emerged from the smoke. Viridians in unmarked combat gear. "Go," Prince Zorith commanded from the foot of the ramp. "I will not leave my people." The prince drew a ceremonial weapon that apparently functioned as more than mere decoration. A pulse of energy erupted from it, forcing the attackers to seek cover. Commander Tarvis fought his way to the prince's side. "Your Highness, you must board. The succession means nothing if I abandon those sworn to protect me," the prince responded, firing another energy pulse. Ethan watched from the ship's entrance, stunned by the sudden violence. This was supposed to be a secure diplomatic station, yet here was what amounted to a small war breaking out over him. The absurdity of it all suddenly crystallized into clarity. Whatever the truth of his origins, people were fighting, possibly dying, because of the birthmark he carried. He couldn't stand by while others fought his battles. Before Neria could stop him, Ethan raced back down the ramp. "What are you doing?" she called after him in alarm. Ethan ignored her, sprinting to where Prince Zorith and Tarvis were pinned down behind a cargo container. Energy weapons fire sizzled overhead, leaving scorch marks on the docking bay walls. "Your Highness," Ethan shouted as he slid into cover beside them. "This is about me. Let me surrender to them, and your people can escape." Prince Zorith looked at him with genuine surprise. "That is unexpectedly noble, but tactically unsound. My cousin's agents would eliminate you immediately and still come for me." "Then let me help," Ethan insisted. "I'm not royalty. I'm a maintenance worker. I know this station better than they do." A calculating look crossed the prince's face. "The maintenance tunnels?" Ethan nodded quickly. "There's an access point behind that panel." He pointed to a seemingly solid wall section 20 meters away. "It leads to the central hub. From there, we can reach any part of the station undetected, including your ship from another angle." Tarvis looked skeptical. "Your Highness, we cannot trust. He bears the royal marker." Prince Zorith cut him off, and he returned to help rather than save himself. That speaks to his character. He turned to Ethan. "Lead the way. We'll cover you." What followed was a desperate dash across the docking bay, energy weapons fire crackling around them. Ethan's heart pounded as he raced toward the maintenance access panel, the prince and Tarvis close behind. With practiced movements, Ethan pressed the hidden release, and the panel slid open. The three of them ducked inside just as a barrage of energy pulses hit the wall where they had been standing. The maintenance tunnel was narrow and dimly lit, designed for repair drones and occasional human technicians. Ethan moved confidently through the labyrinth, drawing on 3 years of experience navigating Alpha 7's hidden infrastructure. "Your knowledge is impressive," Prince Zorith observed as they crawled through a particularly tight section. "It's my job to know these tunnels," Ethan replied, focusing on the path ahead. "Never thought I'd be using them to escape assassins." "Not assassins," Tarvis corrected grimly. "Extraction team. They want you alive. Specifically, they want the royal marker." Ethan paused at a junction, considering their options. What exactly would they do with me if they caught me? Prince Zorith and Tarvis exchanged looks. The most likely scenario, the prince said carefully, would be forced genetic sampling, followed by elimination of the source U. With the marker's genetic code, they could potentially create artificial royal markers, Tarvis added. Fake legitimacy for Lord Maurin's claim. Ethan felt sick. They'd kill me for a DNA sample? Politics on my world can be ruthless, Prince Zorith said with evident distaste. It is one of the things I hope to change. They continued through the tunnels, eventually reaching a vertical shaft with a maintenance ladder. This leads to the upper docking ring, Ethan explained. Your ship can be accessed from Bay 12, which should be clear if they're focusing their search on the lower level. As they climbed, Ethan found himself wondering how his life had transformed so completely in less than a day. From invisible janitor to the center of an alien political crisis, all because of a birthmark he'd had his entire life. They emerged into a service corridor near the upper docking bays. Prince Zorith consulted a small communication device. Neria reports the ship has relocated to Bay 14, he said. They're standing by for our arrival. Bay 14 is through the main concourse, Ethan said with a frown. We'd be exposed. Is there another way? Tarvis asked. Ethan considered for a moment. The exterior maintenance crawlway. It's meant for hull repairs, but it connects all the docking bays on this level. That sounds dangerous, the prince observed. More dangerous than energy weapons? Ethan countered with a wry smile. Prince Zorith actually laughed. A musical sound that reminded Ethan how alien he truly was despite his humanoid appearance. You make a fair point. Let on. The exterior crawlway required environmental suits, which they found in a nearby maintenance locker. The suits were designed for human proportions, making them an awkward fit for the taller, more slender Viridians. How do you humans move in these? Tarvis complained as he struggled with the helmet seal. We manage, Ethan replied, helping the commander adjust the suit. Though I usually just have to fix cleaning drones, not escape political conspiracies. Once suited, they exited through an airlock into the crawlway, a narrow enclosed path that ran along the station's outer hull. Through small viewport sections, Ethan could see the vast sweep of the gas giant below and the starfield beyond. The sight would have been breathtaking if not for the urgency of their situation. They had nearly reached Bay 14 when Ethan's suit communicator crackled to life. This is station security to all personnel. Be advised, 3 fugitives are attempting to flee the station, including a human male identified as Ethan Cole. They are considered armed and dangerous. Report any sightings immediately. They've compromised station security, Tarvis growled. We need to hurry. As they approached the airlock leading to Bay 14, Ethan noticed movement through the viewport, armed figures taking positions around the prince's ship. Wait, he warned, pulling the others back. There's an ambush waiting. Prince Zorith peered through the viewport and cursed softly in Viridian. Maurin's agents. They must have anticipated our route. What now? Ethan asked, feeling trapped between the vacuum of space and hostile forces. The prince's expression was difficult to read through his helmet visor, but his voice was resolute. We need a diversion. Commander, contact the ship. Tell them to prepare for emergency departure protocols. While Tarvis relayed the instructions, Prince Zorith turned to Ethan. I need to ask something significant of you, Ethan Cole. Something that may seem counter to your instincts. What? Ethan asked warily. I need you to reveal yourself, to show them what they want. Ethan stared at him in disbelief. You want me to surrender? Not surrender, the prince clarified. Distract. Draw their attention while Tarvis and I circle to the ship from another angle. Once aboard, we can extract you using the ship's teleportation system. Teleportation, Ethan repeated. That's real. For short ranges and significant energy cost. Yes, Prince Zorith confirmed. But they'll need to see you to lock onto your genetic signature, specifically the royal marker. Ethan considered the plan. It was risky, but he couldn't see another option. What do I need to do? Enter through this airlock. Make yourself visible, then run toward Bay 13, the prince instructed. Keep moving, stay in cover when possible, but ensure they can track you. The ship will handle the rest. That's a terrible plan, Ethan said bluntly. But I don't have a better one. Prince Zortha's eyes crinkled in what Ethan assumed was a smile behind his visor. Perhaps you do have royal blood after all. That sounded exactly like something my brother would say. Minutes later, Ethan found himself removing his environmental suit and preparing to enter Bay 14 alone. His heart hammered in his chest, and sweat beaded on his forehead. Remember, Prince Zorth said as final instruction, they want you alive. Use that to your advantage. Ethan nodded, took a deep breath, and cycled through the airlock. The bay appeared empty at first glance, but Ethan knew better. He moved cautiously along the wall, making himself visible but not obvious. He had nearly reached the corridor leading to Bay 13 when a voice called out, "Human, remain where you are." Ethan turned to see a Viridian in unmarked security gear, weapon trained on him. Others emerged from concealment, quickly surrounding him. "Ethan Cole," the lead agent said, "you will come with us. Lord Maurin wishes to speak with you about your unique heritage." Ethan raised his hand slowly. "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just a maintenance worker." "A maintenance worker with a royal marker," the agent replied coldly. "Remove your shirt. We need to confirm. Here? Now." Ethan stalled, backing slowly toward the corridor. "Isn't that a bit forward? You could at least buy me dinner first." The agent's expression darkened. "Human humor is inappropriate for this situation. Comply, or we will force compliance." Ethan's gaze darted around the bay, noting the positions of the agents and searching for Prince Zorith and Tarvis. He saw no sign of them, which he hoped meant their flanking maneuver was working. "Fine," he said, carefully pulling his shirt over his head to reveal the starburst birthmark on his shoulder. "Happy now?" The lead agent activated a scanner similar to the one Neria had used. It chimed and glowed gold when directed at Ethan's birthmark. "Confirmed," the agent reported into a communicator. "We have the anomaly. Preparing for transport." "You know," Ethan said conversationally, continuing to edge backward, "I always thought this was just a birthmark. Turns out it makes me royalty. Funny how things work out." "You are not royalty," the agent said dismissively. "You are an aberration, a mistake that threatens the proper succession." "Funny," Ethan retorted. "Prince Zorith sees it differently." At the mention of the prince, the agent's eyes narrowed. Prince Zorith's progressive policies would destroy Viridian tradition. Lord Maurin will restore proper order, starting with eliminating anomalies like you. Ethan had reached the corridor entrance. "Well, it's been a fascinating chat, but I think I'll pass on meeting Lord Maurin." With that, he turned and sprinted down the corridor. Shouts erupted behind him, followed by the distinctive whine of energy weapons powering up. Ethan zigzagged as he ran, making himself a difficult target. A pulse of energy struck the wall beside him, showering him with sparks. "We need him alive," he heard someone shout, confirming what Prince Zorth had said about their intentions. Ethan rounded a corner and found himself in a crowded section of the station's public area. Civilians of various species scattered at the sight of him being chased by armed Viridians. He darted through the crowd, using the confusion to his advantage. "Stop the human," one of the agents called out. "Station security. Fugitive." Several bystanders moved to block Ethan's path, responding to what they believed was a legitimate security operation. Ethan dodged around a massive Tellurian merchant only to find his way blocked by an Arcturian diplomat. "Surrender, human," the Arcturian commanded, his three eyes glaring down at Ethan. "Not today," Ethan replied, dropping to slide between the Arcturian's legs, a maneuver he'd perfected while cleaning under particularly stubborn diplomatic tables. As he regained his feet and continued running, Ethan wondered how long he needed to keep this chase going. Prince Zorith had mentioned teleportation, but Ethan had no idea when or how it would happen. He burst into an observation deck, its massive viewport providing a spectacular view of the gas giant below. The deck was crowded with visitors, many taking images of the celestial panorama. Ethan's pursuers had fallen behind slightly, but he knew they would catch up soon. He was running out of station to flee through. As if in answer to his thoughts, his birthmark began to tingle. The sensation grew stronger, becoming almost a vibration. Ethan looked down in alarm to see the starburst pattern glowing with a soft golden light visible even through the thin shirt he'd replaced after the agent's inspection. The glow intensified, and Ethan felt a strange weightlessness overtake him. Around him, station visitors backed away in astonishment. Even his pursuers, now entering the observation deck, slowed in confusion. What's happening? Ethan wondered aloud as the tingling sensation spread throughout his body. A voice seemed to answer in his mind, not in words, but in concepts, impressions, recognition, kinship, return. The world around Ethan began to shimmer and dissolve. The last thing he saw was the lead Viridian agent lunging toward him, hands outstretched in desperation, and then emptiness closing around the agent's grasping fingers. Ethan experienced a moment of perfect stillness, as if suspended between heartbeats. Then reality reasserted itself, and he found himself standing in a chamber of gleaming metal and pulsing light. Prince Zorith, Commander Tarvis, and Nereus stood before him, along with several Viridian technicians monitoring complex equipment. Teleportation successful, one technician reported. Genetic integrity maintained at 99.8%. The remaining 0.2% will regenerate within hours, Neria added, approaching Ethan with a medical scanner. How do you feel? Ethan took a shaky breath, assessing himself. Like I've been taken apart and put back together, which I guess is exactly what happened. Prince Zorith stepped forward. The teleportation system locked onto your royal marker. The genetic signature is unique enough to serve as a targeting parameter. You performed admirably, Ethan Cole. Did I have a choice? Ethan asked, a hint of bitterness creeping into his voice. In any of this, the prince's expression softened. We all have choices, though rarely the ones we would prefer. For what it's worth, I regret involving you in Viridian politics. A slight shudder ran through the floor beneath them. Tarvis moved to a communication panel. We have cleared Alpha 7's docking clamps. Setting course for Viridia Prime. Wait, Ethan said in alarm. Viridia? I thought we were going to Earth to talk to my parents. The situation has escalated beyond what I anticipated, Prince Zorith explained. Lord Maurin has made his move openly now. We must return to Viridia Prime to address the succession crisis directly, with you as evidence of my brother's survival, at least in genetic legacy. I don't want to be part of your politics. Ethan protested. I just want answers about who I am. The answers you seek are on Viridia, Nereus said gently, in Prince Alarian's sealed research archives. If you truly wish to understand your origins, that is where we must go. Ethan felt trapped, swept along by events beyond his control, his identity in question, his future uncertain. Yet beneath the fear and confusion, a small part of him felt curiosity, even excitement. If what they believed was true, he was connected to something larger than his life as a station janitor. How long to Viridia Prime? He asked resignedly. Approximately 3 Earth days at maximum speed, Prince Zorith replied. Time enough for you to learn some basics about Viridian culture and politics before we arrive. And time for you to tell me everything you know about your brother, Ethan added firmly. If he's connected to my birth somehow, I want every detail you can remember. The prince nodded. Of course. I believe we have much to learn from each other, Ethan Cole. Perhaps together we can solve both our problems, your quest for identity and my struggle to reform a tradition-bound society. As the ship accelerated away from Alpha 7, Ethan looked out a viewport at the receding station. Somewhere down there, Maya was probably wondering what had happened to him. His supervisor likely assumed he had quit without notice. His small life as a maintenance worker was over, replaced by, what? Royal politics? Genetic mystery? Interstellar conflict? One thing was certain. The joke he had made about being a lost prince had turned his life upside down in ways he could never have imagined. And the scanner hadn't been joking when it confirmed his royal heritage. The journey to Viridia Prime gave Ethan time to process the shocking revelations about his possible origins. Prince Zorith proved to be a patient teacher, explaining Viridian history, culture, and politics during their daily meetings. The succession crisis began 5 years ago, the prince explained as they sat in his private study aboard the royal vessel. When my father, High Sovereign Telomere, fell ill with a rare neurological condition that affects even those with the royal marker. He can't rule anymore? Ethan asked, trying to keep track of the complex political situation. He lives, but cannot govern, Prince Zorith confirmed. As his eldest son, I became regent. My policies, particularly regarding interspecies cooperation and modernization of our governance structures, have met resistance from traditional factions led by my cousin, Lord Malloran. And where does the Lost Prince fit into this? Ethan asked. Your brother Ilarion. A shadow crossed the prince's features. Ilarion was brilliant but controversial. His genetic research pushed boundaries that many Viridians considered sacred. When his ship was destroyed 29 years ago, there were whispers that it was not entirely accidental. You think he was assassinated? Ethan asked, stunned. I had my suspicions, Prince Zorth admitted. But without proof, I could not act. And now, with your existence. He gestured to Ethan's birthmark, which had returned to its normal appearance after the teleportation. It suggests Ilarion may have orchestrated his own disappearance. To do what? Create me? Ethan shook his head. That makes no sense. Perhaps not from a human perspective, Neria interjected. She had joined their educational sessions, providing scientific context to the prince's political explanations. But Ilarion's research focused on genetic adaptation across species barriers. The implications were revolutionary and threatening to those who believe in Viridian genetic superiority. So you think he faked his death, went to Earth, and what? Created a human baby with Viridian royal DNA. Ethan still couldn't wrap his mind around the concept. Or transformed himself, Prince Zorth suggested quietly. Ilarion's more theoretical papers discussed the possibility of complete genetic restructuring, of Viridian becoming, for all practical purposes, human, while retaining certain genetic markers. Ethan stood and paced the study, running a hand through his hair in frustration. This is insane. You're suggesting I might be your brother, transformed into a human baby? Or some kind of genetic experiment he created? We will not know the truth until we access his sealed archives, Neria said. But the scanner does not lie, Ethan. You carry the royal marker. That is an irrefutable fact. On the third day of their journey, as Viridia Prime appeared on the ship's view screens, a breathtaking world of crystalline oceans and spiraling continent formations, Ethan made a decision. I need to contact my parents, he told Prince Zorth. Before we land. Before this becomes any more complicated. The prince considered this request. It could be risky. Communications can be intercepted. They raised me, Ethan said firmly. They deserve to know what's happening. And they might have information about my birth that could help us understand all of this. After some deliberation, Prince Zorth agreed. A secure communication channel was established, routed through multiple relays to obscure its origin. When his parents' faces appeared on the screen, his father's weathered features creased with concern, his mother's eyes wide with relief. Ethan felt a surge of emotion he hadn't anticipated. Ethan, his mother exclaimed. We've been so worried. Your supervisor said you disappeared during some kind of security incident on the station. I'm okay, Mom, Ethan assured her. But something's happened. Something complicated. Over the next 20 minutes, Ethan explained the situation as best he could, watching his parents' expressions shift from confusion to shock to something he couldn't quite identify. When he finished, a heavy silence hung over the connection. Finally, his father cleared his throat. Ethan, there's something we should have told you long ago. Ethan's heart seemed to skip a beat. What? His mother reached for his father's hand, drawing strength from the contact. 28 years ago, we were living in that little house outside Denver, remember? Your father was working for the Planetary Defense Grid installation. I remember, Ethan said, though the house was just a vague impression from early childhood. One night, his father continued, there was a light in the sky, not like a normal aircraft. It crashed in the forest about a mile from our property. Ethan sat very still, hardly daring to breathe. We went to investigate, his mother said. We found a craft, not large, and inside. Her voice faltered. Inside was a man, his father finished. Human, as far as we could tell. Injured, unconscious. And next to him was a baby. A human baby with a distinctive birthmark on its shoulder. Me, Ethan whispered. His mother nodded, tears welling in her eyes. The man was barely alive. He looked at us and said only one thing before he died. Protect him. We buried the man and destroyed the craft as best we could. And we took you home. You were such a perfect baby, his mother continued, wiping at her tears. So alert, so quick to learn. We couldn't have children of our own, and it seemed like a miracle. We convinced ourselves that maybe he had kidnapped you from somewhere, that we were doing the right thing by raising you ourselves. But you knew I wasn't normal, Ethan said, a statement rather than a question. His father nodded gravely. You developed faster than other children, your mind especially, and sometimes, when you were very young, your birthmark would glow faintly in the dark. But we loved you, Ethan. You were our son in every way that mattered. Beside Ethan, Prince Zorith had been listening intently. This man, did he have any distinguishing features? Anything that might have seemed unusual? Ethan's parents exchanged looks. His eyes, his mother said hesitantly. They were unusual. Silvery, almost luminescent in certain lights. We thought it was an effect of the crash at first. Prince Zorith inhaled sharply. Viridian eyes, he murmured. Even through genetic restructuring, some traits might persist. Where did you bury him? Ethan asked, his voice tight with emotion. In the woods where he crashed, his father replied. We marked the spot with stones arranged in the same pattern as your birthmark. We thought, if anyone ever came looking for you, they might recognize it. The implications washed over Ethan in waves. He had not been born to these people who had raised him, loved him, shaped his identity. Yet their care for him was undeniable. I don't know what to say, he admitted. Say you understand why we kept this from you, his mother pleaded. We were afraid you would be taken away, studied, treated as something other than human. I understand, Ethan said, and found that he did. You protected me, just as he asked. The communication ended with tearful goodbyes and promises to talk again soon. As the screen went dark, Ethan sat in silence, processing the confirmation of what he had feared and suspected since the scanner first recognized his birthmark. What now? He asked finally, looking up at Prince Zorith. Now we land on Viridia Prime, the prince replied solemnly. We seek the truth in my brother's archives, and we face Lord Maurin's challenge to the succession. And where do I fit in that plan? Ethan asked. Prince Zorith regarded him thoughtfully. That, Ethan Cole, or perhaps Ethan Alarian, is entirely up to you. Viridia Prime was unlike any world Ethan had ever seen. From orbit, its crystalline oceans and spiraling continent formations had been breathtaking. Up close, its alien beauty was almost overwhelming. Towering spires of natural crystal formations, atmospheric conditions that created perpetual aurora displays in the upper sky, and vegetation in shades of purple and silver rather than Earth's familiar greens. The royal vessel landed at a private spaceport adjacent to the capital city of Veridara. Security forces loyal to Prince Zorith secured a perimeter, scanning constantly for any signs of Lord Maurin's agents. We must move quickly, Commander Tarvis advised as they prepared to disembark. Our arrival will not go unnoticed for long. Prince Zorith nodded. Have the transport ready. We go directly to the royal archives. As they descended the boarding ramp, Ethan felt the subtle difference in gravity, slightly less than Earth standard, and breathed in air that tasted faintly of cinnamon and ozone. Despite the circumstances, he couldn't help but feel a sense of wonder. How many humans had stood on this alien world? A sleek vehicle awaited them, hovering silently above the landing pad. Once aboard, it accelerated smoothly into a transit tube that arched over the spectacular cityscape of Veridara. The royal archives are housed beneath the ancestral temple, Prince Zorith explained as they traveled. It is one of the most secure locations on the planet, accessible only to those with royal authorization. Will my presence there cause problems? Ethan asked, watching the alien city blur past the transport's windows. Politically, yes, the prince acknowledged. But physically, no. The security systems respond to the royal marker. If you truly carry my brother's genetic legacy, the archives will recognize you as authorized. The ancestral temple proved to be a massive structure of crystalline spires and arching bridges, situated on an island in the center of a shimmering lake. Its architecture seemed to defy gravity, with sections that appeared to float unsupported. Their transport docked at a private entrance, where more royal guards stood at attention. They bowed deeply to Prince Zorith but cast curious, sometimes suspicious glances at Ethan. Stay close, the prince advised as they entered the temple. And try not to touch anything unless I indicate it's safe. The interior of the temple was a testament to Viridian aesthetic sensibilities, spaces defined by light and shadow rather than solid walls, surfaces that shifted subtly as if alive, and everywhere the soft glow of what appeared to be bioluminescent technology integrated into the structure itself. They descended via a spiral walkway that wound downward through the heart of the temple. As they reached a certain depth, Ethan noticed his birthmark beginning to tingle again. "We're approaching the archive's security perimeter," Neria explained, noticing his reaction. "The systems are already reading your marker." At the bottom of the spiral, they faced an apparent dead end, a solid wall inscribed with elaborate Viridian script and symbols. Prince Zorith placed his hand on a specific pattern in the center of the wall. The starburst birthmark on his forehead glowed softly, and sections of the wall began to reconfigure, opening a passage. "Your turn," the prince said to Ethan. "Place your hand where mine was." Hesitantly, Ethan stepped forward and pressed his palm against the still warm surface. For a moment, nothing happened. Then his birthmark flared with golden light, and the passage widened further. "Recognition confirmed," Neria murmured. "The archive acknowledges you as royal bloodline." Beyond the entrance lay a vast chamber filled with what Ethan could only assume were information storage systems, crystalline structures pulsing with inner light, arranged in concentric circles around a central platform. "These are the general archives," Prince Zorith explained. "Records of Viridian history, science, culture. But what we seek is more specific." He led them to another doorway at the far side of the chamber. This one was smaller, less imposing, but surrounded by warning glyphs that even Ethan could recognize as prohibitive. "My brother's private research laboratory and archives," the prince said. "Sealed since his disappearance 29 years ago." "Can you open it?" Ethan asked. Prince Zorith shook his head. "I have tried many times over the years. The security systems are keyed specifically to Alarian's genetic pattern, similar to mine, but distinct enough that my marker is rejected." Understanding dawned on Ethan. "But if I really do carry his genetic marker, then you may be the key," Neria confirmed. "If you are indeed his creation, or Alarian himself transformed, your royal marker should match the security parameters." Ethan approached the sealed door. Unlike the main archive entrance, this one featured a simple scanner panel rather than a handprint recognition system. "Your birthmark," Prince Zorith instructed. "Expose it to the scanner." Ethan pulled down the collar of his shirt, revealing the starburst pattern. As he leaned toward the scanner, his birthmark began to glow more intensely than before, pulsing with golden light that seemed to resonate with the scanner itself. For several seconds, nothing else happened. Then a soft chime sounded, and the sealed door receded into the wall, revealing a laboratory that appeared frozen in time. "It worked," Neria whispered, awe evident in her voice. After all these years, they entered cautiously. The laboratory was smaller than Ethan had expected, intimate rather than imposing. Workstations lined the walls, their displays dark, but presumably still functional. Specimen containers, now empty, stood in careful arrangements. At the center was a desk with what appeared to be a journal made of some iridescent material. Prince Zorith approached the journal reverently. "My brother's research log. If answers exist anywhere, they will be here." As the prince reached for the journal, a holographic projection suddenly activated above the desk. A figure took form, a Viridian male who bore a striking resemblance to Prince Zorith, though younger, with more animated features and eyes that sparked with intelligence. "Ilarion," the prince breathed, his voice thick with emotion. The hologram spoke, its voice resonant and clear despite the decades that had passed. "If you are viewing this message, then my contingency plan has succeeded. The bearer of my royal marker has returned to Viridia. Brother, if you are present, I hope you can forgive what must have seemed like betrayal when I disappeared." Ethan stared at the hologram, at the being who might have created him, or who might somehow be him in a previous form. "My research into cross-species genetic adaptation progressed further than anyone suspected," the hologram continued. "I discovered that the royal marker, the supposed divine blessing of our bloodline, is in fact a sophisticated biological mechanism capable of preserving consciousness across genetic restructuring. In simple terms, I found a way to become human while retaining my essential self." Prince Zorth sank into a chair, visibly shaken. He transformed himself. The political climate on Viridia was becoming increasingly hostile to my work, holographic Alarian explained. Traditional factions feared the implications of genetic fluidity between species. There were threats, then attempts on my life. I realized I had only one option, to become my own experiment. The hologram gestured, and schematics appeared beside it, detailed plans for a small spacecraft, and what appeared to be a genetic transformation chamber. I staged my death and traveled to the edge of human space. There, I used the technology detailed in these archives to transform myself into a human infant, with accelerated development capabilities and the royal marker preserved in a form that would appear as a simple birthmark. My adult consciousness would be suppressed during transformation, but would remain encoded in the marker, potentially retrievable under specific circumstances. Ethan felt lightheaded. He turned himself into a baby? Into me. The process was not perfect, the hologram admitted, as if anticipating the question. Memory suppression was necessary for the transformation to succeed. The human child I would become would have no knowledge of his Viridian origins, only the potential to rediscover them if ever exposed to the specific frequencies of a royal genetic scanner. Which is exactly what happened on Alpha 7, Neria murmured. If this message is playing, then the human I became has returned to Viridia. To whoever that is, you carry my genetic legacy, my royal marker, but you are also your own person, shaped by your human experiences. The choice of what to do with this knowledge belongs to you. The hologram turned, seeming to look directly at Prince Zorth. Brother, if you are there, I entrust this human to your care, regardless of what he chooses. He is family, in a way none of us could have imagined. With that, the hologram faded, leaving the laboratory in silence save for the soft hum of systems reactivating after decades of dormancy. Ethan stood motionless, trying to process the implications. He wasn't just connected to Prince Alarian. He was Alarian, transformed into human form. Yet he was also Ethan Cole, raised by human parents, with 28 years of human experiences and memories. This is unprecedented, Neria finally said, breaking the heavy silence. The theoretical implications alone are secondary to the personal ones, Prince Zorth interrupted gently. He turned to Ethan. I cannot imagine what you must be feeling. Ethan laughed hollowly. I don't think there's a word for it. In any language. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit he'd had for as long as he could remember. Had Alarian had the same mannerism? I'm me. I'm Ethan. But I'm also him. Part of him. I don't know. You are who you have always been, Prince Zorth said with unexpected compassion. This knowledge changes your understanding of your origins, but not who you are at your core. In the days that followed, Ethan immersed himself in Alarian's research while political tensions on Viridia reached a breaking point. Lord Maurin formally challenged Prince Zorth's right to succession, citing the human abomination as evidence of royal corruption. The confrontation came during a dramatic High Council session. Lord Maurin's forces had the chamber surrounded when Ethan stepped forward, his birthmark glowing brilliantly. I am Ethan Cole, he declared, raised human, but carrying Prince Alarian's royal marker. I stand not as a claimant to the throne, but as living proof that Viridians and humans are more compatible than anyone imagined. He revealed the full extent of Alarian's research, genetic adaptability that could revolutionize medicine across species, solve resource limitations, and unite the galactic community. Your traditions fear this knowledge, Ethan continued, but your future depends on embracing it. When Lord Maurin attempted a military coup, the marker technology Ethan had mastered from Alarian's archives activated the palace's ancient defense systems, recognizing only true royal lineage. Maurin's forces were neutralized without bloodshed. Prince Zorth instituted the reforms his brother had envisioned, with Ethan as Earth's first ambassador to Viridia. His unique perspective, human experience with Viridian insight, made him extraordinarily effective at bridging cultural gaps. He regularly visited his parents on Earth, who were overwhelmed but proud when they learned the full truth. Maya eventually joined the diplomatic corps, working alongside her former colleague who now helped reshape interstellar politics. Years later, Standing on a balcony overlooking Veradara with Prince Zorith, Ethan reflected on his journey. "I never imagined my joke about being royalty would lead to all this," he said. "The birthmark scanner wasn't joking when it confirmed what you truly are," Zorith replied. "Neither human nor Viridian, but something new, a bridge between worlds." Ethan smiled, finally at peace with his dual nature. The lost prince had found his purpose, far greater than any throne. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also, leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.